Beyond the Gates spoilers for next week, July 21st to 25th, tease that Naomi has reached her breaking point. Her voice trembles as she gathers her family in the living room, her eyes darting between each familiar face, calculating how to begin unraveling a truth so heavy it could destroy them all. For days, she has kept the weight of a devastating secret to herself, one that circles back to Vernon and Annette and to a murder they thought had been buried with Kenneth. But Naomi has seen the files, the photographs, the forged reports. She knows the cover-up was meticulous, but she also knows the cracks are widening. Vernon, once the stoic pillar of the family, is more than just complicit. Naomi believes he didn't just help Anita cover up Kenneth's murder, he was the orchestrator. And what's worse, Vernon harbors a separate, more personal secret, something to do with June. Naomi remembers June as a quiet, haunted woman who vanished from their lives years ago. Whispers once suggested she had been Vernon's lover. Others murmured that she was his daughter. Either way, Naomi is convinced now that June is connected more deeply to this family tragedy than anyone had guessed. Her tone sharpens as she warns the others, this secret, whatever form it takes, is about to detonate. In another corner of the same storm, Nicole's rage boils over. She corners Bill in the hallway, her voice echoing off the walls as she points an accusatory finger at him. You started this. All of it. Bill, tired and hardened by years of difficult decisions, doesn't flinch. His jaw tightens, and he fires back with a truth that lands like a slap. If it weren't for him, Nicole's son would either be dead or rotting in a prison cell. He took risks real, life-threatening. Honesto saved the boy. And now Nicole, standing in judgment, acts as though none of it ever happened. The moment hangs heavy in the air. There's history between them, the kind that ruins people. Nicole stares at Bill with glassy eyes but says nothing more. Her silence confirms the guilt, the complexity, the betrayal. Bill walks away, knowing that gratitude can't always be expected, even when it's deserved. Especially not in this family. Meanwhile, Martin's world begins to collapse. The house that once rang with laughter now holds only shadows. He stands on the porch, suitcase in hand, as Bradley Smitty Smith, his brother-in-law, and once his closest ally, locks the front door behind him with a finality that leaves no room for doubt. Martin has been exiled. He walks to his car in silence, consumed by fear, shame, and the unshakable sense that this may be the end of the life he built. Inside the car, he breaks. Tears he hadn't allowed himself to cry spill over as his mind races through worst-case scenarios: jail time, divorce, public disgrace. And the police are circling. He can feel it. Every day, more questions come. Every call he gets makes his heart race. It won't be long before they come for him. In stark contrast to this chaos, Eva and Thomas find themselves drawn closer. What began as cautious flirtation has evolved into something more dangerous. In quiet corners of late-night kitchens and empty office hallways, touches have turned into kisses, and kisses have become something deeper. They crossed the line this week, giving in to what they both had tried to deny. For Thomas, it's a breath of air after drowning in grief for years. For Eva, it's something more complicated. Love? Perhaps. Or maybe it's just the feeling of finally being seen. Ted, watching from a distance, feels the slow burn of jealousy morph into full-blown devastation. He had convinced himself that Eva and Thomas were harmless, that their bond was merely supportive, not romantic. That illusion shatters when he finds Kat sobbing in the break room, mascara-streaked cheeks, whispering what he never wanted to hear: Eva and Thomas have slept together. Kat's pain is palpable, but so is Ted's shock. He'd misread everything. Again. And now all he can do is sit in the ruins of his assumptions, too paralyzed to act but too furious to let it go. Back at Naomi's home, tensions escalate further as Jacob Hawthorne enters the fray. A quiet observer turned reluctant participant, Jacob begins piecing things together. A slip of the tongue from Martin, a stray comment from Naomi, and the picture becomes clear. Martin has been hiding something far worse than anyone thought. When Naomi confronts Jacob, hoping for support, she's met with an icy silence. How long have you known? Jacob finally asks, the betrayal thick in his voice. Naomi tries to explain how complicated it all is, how torn she's been, how much she wanted to protect everyone. But Jacob doesn't want excuses. He wants the truth. And the truth is, the family Naomi has tried so hard to protect is riddled with crime, secrets, and moral decay. They fight, not with fists, but with words sharp enough to wound. When Jacob slams the door on his way out, Naomi realizes she may have lost more than just his trust. She may have lost her marriage. Bill, now increasingly isolated, faces another battle, this time with his own daughter, Chelsea Hamilton. Their relationship has always been rocky, but this confrontation threatens to obliterate whatever bond remained. Chelsea has discovered what Bill did to protect Nicole's son, and she sees it as betrayal not just to their family, but to the law and the principles Bill once claimed to uphold. She doesn't mince words. You let your own family fall apart to save hers. Bill tries to defend himself, his voice rising in frustration. But Chelsea is done listening. To her, this isn't about loyalty or sacrifice. It's about a man who constantly chooses chaos over accountability. As she walks away, Bill finally realizes the cost of the choices he's made, and it's steeper than he imagined. The Dupree family, long admired for their unity and apparent strength, now finds itself fraying at the seams. Every whispered lie, every buried secret, is clawing its way to the surface. And in the center of the storm is Martin, the man with the most to lose. The weight of his actions, the consequences of his silence, are catching up with him. And there will be no escaping them now. But the damage extends far beyond Martin. Each member of the family is implicated in their own way. Naomi, for her silence. Nicole, for her manipulation. Bill, for his recklessness. Eva, for her infidelity. And Vernon, for a past that refuses to stay buried. As the week unfolds, truths come to light faster than anyone can manage. Old loyalties shatter. New alliances form from desperation, not trust. It's not just a family falling apart. It's a legacy unraveling. One built on lies, secrets, and the kind of love that demands silence instead of truth. And though no one will admit it yet, they all know, the worst is still to come. Naomi stood in the wreckage of her own making, yet there was no turning back. She had rung the warning bell, forced the shadows into the light, and now had to face the scorched consequences. With Jacob gone, her world teetered, but Naomi remained fierce in purpose. The secret surrounding Vernon and Anita had cracked open too wide to close. Her suspicions about June had turned into a grim certainty after finding a hidden envelope in Vernon's old desk, a birth certificate tucked behind photographs long faded. June wasn't just Vernon's old flame. She was his daughter. And Kenneth had died protecting that secret. Vernon, when confronted, denied nothing. His hands shook as he poured a drink, his usual composure stripped bare. He spoke not as a villain, but as a man weathered by shame. June had been born from an affair no one knew about. When Anita discovered the truth, it set off a chain of events that ended with Kenneth in a shallow grave and a web of lies spun to preserve what little dignity Vernon had left. Naomi, disgusted yet oddly empathetic, made it clear, if Vernon didn't come clean, she would. And with her marriage in tatters and her conscience bleeding, she had nothing left to lose. Across town, Nicole still burned from her fight with Bill. Her anger hadn't cooled, but something else gnawed at her now. As much as she hated to admit it, Bill was right. Her son had been on a collision course with disaster. If Bill hadn't intervened, the boy would have been devoured by the system. That didn't absolve Bill of everything, but it blurred the lines. Nicole began to wonder if her need to pin blame was just her way of dodging responsibility. Then came an unexpected twist. Her son returned home from school bloodied and shaken. He had been threatened not by some schoolyard bully, but by someone connected to Kenneth's past. Nicole realized then that what had seemed like ancient history was still very much alive. Someone out there wanted to make sure Kenneth's murder stayed buried, and they were willing to target a teenager to make their point. Nicole reached out to Bill again, swallowing her pride. She didn't say she forgave him. She simply asked for help. Bill showed up within the hour. Martin's spiral reached a chilling depth. Alone and hunted by both his family and the law, he found himself pacing the floor of a motel room with peeling paint and a broken lock. Every knock at the door sent him into a panic. Sleep became impossible. Food, irrelevant. He kept seeing Smitty's face the disgust, the final Lydia's he slammed the door on their relationship. Martin never expected to lose his family so completely, and now, with the police closing in, his only thought was survival. A late-night news report changed everything. Kenneth's case had been reopened. New evidence had surfaced. Martin's name hadn't been leaked yet, but it was only a matter of time. He had two options, run or confess. But before he could make the decision, he received a text from Naomi. "We need to talk. Now." Eva and Thomas, tangled in their own reckless choices, woke to a different kind of fallout. The bliss of their night together quickly crumbled under the weight of real consequences. Kat had disappeared. No texts. No calls. And her absence hung over Thomas like a curse. He wasn't blind to what he'd done. He'd hurt someone deeply, someone who once loved him enough to imagine a future. Eva, while not regretful, felt the walls closing in. They hadn't been careful. Ted was asking questions. Kat's parents were calling Eva at work. The affair, once secret, had turned radioactive. Ted, still wounded by Eva's betrayal, dug deeper. He started trailing Thomas, half out of paranoia, half out of need for vindication. He saw Thomas meet with someone in a back alley, someone Ted didn't recognize. Money changed hands. Ted snapped a photo, heart pounding. He didn't know what it meant yet, but it confirmed something he suspected. Thomas wasn't just tangled in an affair. He was hiding something far more dangerous. Jacob, meanwhile, attempted to move on, but Naomi's family had lodged itself in his brain like a thorn. Every day brought new revelations through whispers at the law firm, from cops who shouldn't be talking, from reporters chasing a scandal. Jacob learned that Martin had once funneled money through a fake Charisha charity that, coincidentally, was co-founded by Bill. Now it wasn't just about Kenneth. There was financial fraud, too. Maybe even racketeering. Jacob realized he'd been closer to criminal enterprise than he ever imagined. Chelsea Hamilton grew colder toward Bill with every passing day. At first, her fury came from betrayal. But now she felt humiliated. Her father, the man who once lectured her about morality, about choosing the right path, had been operating in shadows. When Chelsea confronted him, Bill didn't deny it. He only asked for understanding. Chelsea refused. Understanding? She spat. You ruined everything to protect people who would never do the same for you. Still, part of her couldn't walk away entirely. She began investigating on her own, poring through public records, following the money trail. What she found sent chills down her spine. Not only had Martin committed fraud, the trail led to Vernon's name. Vernon had laundered funds through shell companies years ago, and those funds may have indirectly paid off someone connected to Kenneth's disappearance. Chelsea wasn't a lawyer, but she knew when something didn't add up. She made copies. Backed up files. She didn't know who to trust yet, but she knew the truth had to come out. As all of these threads tightened, Naomi called a meeting. Not just a family dinner, but a reckoning. Everyone received the message. Nicole. Bill. Martin. Eva. Vernon. Even Jacob, though he didn't reply. They met in the old estate, the same room where so many family celebrations had once taken place. Now it was a war council. Naomi stood at the head of the table, papers and photos spread before her. She outlined everything: Kenneth's death, June's identity, the money trail, the threats to Nicole's son, Martin's crimes. No one was spared. Martin tried to speak, but Naomi raised a hand. You had your chance. Now it's about cleaning this up before we're all behind bars. Arguments erupted. Vernon stood and confessed everything about June. Nicole admitted she had paid someone off to protect her son. Eva confessed the affair. Bill sat in silence, finally stripped of the delusion that he could control any of this. Then Naomi presented the final piece, a subpoena. The DA's office was preparing charges. They had 1 week before the indictments dropped. If they didn't come forward voluntarily, the system would chew them up one by one. Martin stood, shaking. "What do you want us to do?" Naomi stared him down. "Tell the truth. All of it. Together." For a long moment, no one said anything. Then Nicole slowly nodded. Eva looked at Thomas, who averted his gaze. Vernon sat down, defeated. Bill remained unreadable. Outside the estate, Chelsea waited in her car, holding a flash drive with everything she'd discovered. She didn't know if she was about to save her family or end them. Somewhere nearby, Kat emerged from a bus station. Her eyes puffy, her body tense. She held a small envelope with a sonogram inside, addressed to Thomas. She had secrets too, and she was ready to reveal them. The storm hadn't ended. It was just reaching its eye. Everything was about to change. The week passed like a ticking bomb. Each member of the family, from Vernon to Naomi to Martin, drifted through their days like ghosts, anticipating the end. There was no escape left. Naomi had made sure of that. The truth, once exposed, couldn't be stuffed back into the shadows. But no one had expected what would happen next. On the 7th day, just hours before the DA was set to make a public announcement, a leak hit the local press. Chelsea had gone to a trusted investigative journalist, handing over the entire digital archive, the forged financials, the statements, the timeline of the cover-up. She didn't do it to destroy her father. She did it because she believed it was the only way the family could be saved, not as criminals, but as people finally facing the consequences of their choices. The fallout was immediate. News vans descended on the Dupree estate. Reporters circled like vultures. Vernon collapsed while watching the news and was rushed to the hospital. Anita refused to leave his side, but her silence finally broke. She confessed to the police that she'd struck Kenneth in a fit of rage after he threatened to go public about June. Vernon had helped her move the body and rewrite the scene. Martin, already on the brink of mental collapse, turned himself in. The moment he stepped into the precinct, the cameras caught every movement. But Martin didn't care about the media frenzy. He walked in with his lawyer and a prepared statement, ready to accept whatever came. He admitted to the fraud. He admitted to his role in the cover-up. And for the first time in years, he seemed at peace. Nicole was called in for questioning, but was not charged. The threat to her son was now part of a broader criminal conspiracy that included extortion, and her cooperation spared her. But the damage to her public image was severe. Sponsors dropped her. She lost her platform, her influence. Yet in private, she reconnected with her son, no longer posturing as a perfect mother, but finally willing to be a real one. Bill, perhaps the most complicated figure in this web, made a final decision that stunned everyone. He contacted the police and confessed to his role in protecting Nicole's son and to the financial dealings tied to Martin's charity scheme. But he also handed over something else: a ledger Vernon had kept hidden, one that detailed every transaction, every payment made to keep secrets quiet. That ledger became the final nail in the coffin for Vernon's legacy. Jacob, watching all of this unfold from afar, remained silent until Naomi showed up at his door. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't cry. She simply told him she was done hiding. And Jacob, seeing the woman before him, not the one tangled in lies, but the one who had chosen to end them, let her inside. Meanwhile, Eva's life imploded. Kat returned and dropped the bombshell. She was pregnant. The baby was Thomas's. The revelation shook Eva to her core. Thomas, torn between guilt and obligation, chose to support Kat. Eva was left alone, her affair now nothing more than a wound she had inflicted and received. She moved out of town shortly after, citing a need to start over somewhere new, somewhere quiet. Ted didn't follow her. Instead, he filed for divorce and transferred to another division at work, determined to rebuild a life free of betrayals. The photo he had taken of Thomas's alleyway meeting had also made it to authorities. It revealed a payoff to a man tied to the original Kenneth cover-up witness bribed to disappear. That piece of evidence closed the loop. Kat gave birth to a healthy baby girl 8 months later. She named her Hope. The trials were swift and merciless. Vernon, too frail to stand before a judge, entered a plea deal from his hospital bed. Anita followed. Martin received 5 years in federal prison, with eligibility for parole in 3. Bill, due to his cooperation and clean prior record, was sentenced to probation and community service. The family's reputation, once synonymous with power and poise, now lay in ashes. But something else emerged from those ashes: clarity. Naomi rebuilt her relationship with her children. The weight she had carried for years was gone. She volunteered at a legal aid clinic, offering support to families entangled in broken systems, hoping to do more good than harm. Chelsea visited Martin in prison once. Just once. She told him she never hated him, only the cowardice he had allowed to control his life. Martin cried. She didn't. Nicole started a podcast, stripped of glamour, speaking candidly about motherhood, failure, and redemption. Surprisingly, people listened. She found her voice again, not to control a narrative, but to share it. Thomas and Kat co-parented quietly, avoiding the press, the attention, and the curiosity. Kat never returned to her old life. She took night classes, working toward a degree in social work. Thomas taught part-time and wrote a memoir no one expected, but everyone read. Jacob and Naomi found a cautious rhythm, nothing too fast, nothing forced. They took long walks. They stopped trying to explain everything. And in the end, the Dupree estate was sold. The place that once held secrets now sat empty, waiting for someone else to fill its rooms with laughter or lies. But for those who survived, the lesson was brutal and clear: secrets are never truly buried. Truth has a way of clawing its way to the surface. And when it does, it doesn't just break families, it frees them too. Hope, in the form of a child and a second chance, became the thread that stitched the remnants of their lives together. And though no one would ever forget what happened, they carried on. Not as the family they were, but as the people they chose to become. Because survival isn't about holding on to the past. It's about knowing when to finally let go.